My name is Mira, I'm 38 years old, and I can't get that moment out of my head. It wasn't what it looked like, not to anyone on the outside. But inside me, something cracked. That second, right there, in my sister's kitchen, leaning forward to get a tray of muffins out of the oven, and feeling his hands, my cousin's 19-year-old son, brushed too close, too intentionally. My stomach flipped. Not because it was sexual. It wasn't. It was something worse. It reminded me I haven't been touched in years, not in a way that felt wanted. I didn't say anything. I just froze. Then I carried on like I always do. Like a good wife. Like a composed adult. Like a woman who doesn't let things get to her. But the truth is, it's been eating me alive ever since. I've been married to Amir for 14 years. When we met, it was fireworks. He made me feel seen, like I was the only woman in the room. He used to run his fingers up my spine in the middle of conversations, slide his hand onto my thigh in the car, whisper things in my ear that made me blush for hours. But now? If he touches my back, it's to ask me to move so he can reach something. If he kisses me, it's out of habit, lips dry, no pressure, no pause. Just a gesture. A mark of routine. We still sleep in the same bed. He still asks me how my day was. We're not broken, not officially. There's no yelling, no slammed doors, no threats. But we are withering. Quietly. Every day. Last Thursday, he came up behind me while I was washing dishes and wrapped his arms around my waist. I remember thinking finally. And I leaned into it. But the moment lasted all of 2 seconds. He kissed my neck and said, "Did you pay the electric bill?" And just like that, gone. That's what it feels like now. Every intimate moment has a leash. A limit. A timer. Like he's only half present, and the other half is thinking about emails, the kids' school forms, the news, anything but me. I used to crave his touch. Now I miss it while it's happening. And it's not like I haven't tried. I bought lingerie last year, he said it was cute and then turned back to his phone. I planned a weekend away for just us, he said the timing was bad. Every small attempt I made to reach for him was like throwing a rope across a canyon that kept widening. I stopped after a while. Because rejection doesn't always come in slaps, sometimes it comes in shrugs. That moment with my cousin's son wasn't about him. It was about me. About how even an accidental touch, from someone I barely know, reminded me what it used to feel like to be desired. Not by someone inappropriate, but by someone I loved. Someone I chose. I didn't flinch because I was scared. I flinched because I remembered who I used to be, a woman who felt wanted, soft, alive. And in that flash of memory, I realized how far I'd drifted from her. The day I knew things had changed, really changed, wasn't dramatic. It was a Sunday morning. We were making breakfast together, like we always do. I was cutting strawberries. Amir stood next to me, flipping eggs. Our elbows touched, briefly. And I remember waiting, just waiting, for him to look over. To meet my eyes. Smile. Something. But he didn't. He just kept flipping eggs. And I realized then, we don't see each other anymore. And maybe the scariest part? I'm not sure if that's something I can fix, or something I've just gotten really good at surviving. Amir is a surgeon, and for most of our marriage, I told myself the distance was just part of the job. The long shifts. The stress. The pagers and blood and life or death decisions. When he came home exhausted, I tried to be understanding. I cooked. I stayed quiet. I rubbed his shoulders without being asked. I gave him space, thinking that was love. But now it feels like all I've done is disappear. Last night, he came home late again. I was already in bed, curled up with a book I wasn't really reading. He stood in the doorway, took in the scene, and smiled the way someone does when they think they're about to be romantic. "Still awake?" he asked, unbuttoning his shirt. "Missed you today." I gave a small nod. I wanted to say, I missed you too, but not like this. I wanted to say, I missed us, but the word stuck in my throat. Saying that would mean opening a door I wasn't sure he'd walk through. He slid into bed beside me, one hand finding my hip under the blanket. It should have felt good. Once, it would have. But now it just felt like he was reaching for something he hadn't earned. He kissed the back of my neck. You smell like lavender, he whispered. It's the lotion I always use, I said flatly, still facing away. He didn't answer. His hand drifted forward, his fingertips grazing my stomach. I stiffened, not because I didn't want him, but because I wanted him differently. Can we not? I said, too quickly. I'm tired. He froze. Just for a second. Then pulled his hand back like I'd burned him. Right. Of course. And then silence. A deep, raw silence that seemed to swallow both of us. I hated how fast the air between us cooled. I'm sorry, I offered after a minute. It's not you. You're always tired, he said, not unkindly, but not kindly either. That stung. I turned to face him. Do you even hear yourself? You come home at 11 p.m. after a double shift and expect me to be what, waiting like a freshly charged battery? He sat up, exasperated. I try, Mira. I try. I work all day, and I come home to you treating me like a stranger. I treat you like a stranger because you are one, I said before I could stop myself. That landed. I saw it in the way his shoulders slumped, the way his jaw tightened. You think I don't miss you too, he whispered. You think I don't come home dying to feel something real? Then show me that, I said, my voice cracking. Not just in bed. Not just when the lights are off and you're half asleep. Show me during breakfast. Show me when I'm doing the dishes. Show me when I ask you how your day was and you just grunt. He looked stunned, not angry, just confused. Like he'd been speaking one language and I'd been speaking another this whole time. But that's how I show love, he said. I touch. I reach. I hold you. What else do you want from me? I want you to look at me, I said, tears now freely falling. I want to feel like your wife, not your obligation. I want to feel like you see me, Amir. Not just my body. Me. He didn't respond. He just sat there, shoulders curved inward, the way he does when he's prepping for surgery, closed off, clinical. I could tell he thought I was rejecting him. And maybe in a way, I was. But not his body. Not his desire. I was rejecting the silence. The emptiness. The way I'd become a soft place to land, but never someone to talk to. I rolled away from him, facing the wall. My back to his back. Again. This was the new choreography of our marriage, touches that didn't land, words that came too late, and love that couldn't find its way home. And still, I lay there wondering if he hated me for saying the truth. Or worse, if he agreed with it. A few days passed like a fog. We spoke only when necessary, groceries, laundry, school pickup. The everyday. The safe things. But under the surface, something throbbed. Like a low bruise we were both pretending not to notice. That Saturday morning, Amir suggested we go out for coffee. Just the two of us. He said it casually, almost shyly, as he poured cereal for our daughter. Let's get out of the house, he said, avoiding eye contact. You and me. No phones. No distractions. I nodded, surprised, and a little hopeful. Maybe he heard me that night. Maybe it got through. He took me to a small cafe downtown we hadn't been to in years. It was where we used to go before we were married, when we'd sit for hours talking about travel, books, sex, our childhood wounds. Back when there was still mystery between us. He pulled out my chair. Smiled at me in that way, the one that once made my stomach flutter. I smiled back, but it felt like a mask. Over lattes and awkward small talk, He reached across the table and brushed a crumb from my lip with his thumb. The touch should have melted me. But instead, my entire body went rigid. I felt my neck stiffen. My breath catch. I laughed it off, too quickly. You could have just told me. He frowned. It was cute, he said gently. You used to like when I did that. I know, I said, reaching for my cup. I did. Later that night, back at home, I was folding laundry on the bed when he came up behind me and slapped my butt, just like he used to do when we were still flirty, still light. I jumped. Jesus, Amir, sorry, he said, laughing nervously. I thought it was playful. I didn't respond. I stared at the shirt I was folding, suddenly unable to remember where it went. You okay? He asked, coming closer. His hands wrapped around my waist, pulling me back into him. I wanted to relax. I really did. I wanted to lean into his chest and feel that warmth again. But my spine stayed straight. My hands limp. He kissed the top of my head, then moved to my neck. I hated how practiced it felt. How he was touching me the way someone remembers steps from an old dance, not because he felt it, but because he knew he was supposed to. I miss this, he whispered into my skin. I know, I said, almost mechanically. He turned me toward him and kissed me on the lips, slowly, deliberately. But I didn't feel anything. Just the pressure of lips. The absence of spark. He pulled back, searching my face. Mira, where are you right now? I looked up at him, at the man I still loved in some way, but no longer knew how to reach. And I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him I wasn't cold, I was starving. Starving for the emotional oxygen we'd stopped breathing years ago. I don't know, I whispered. I'm just tired. He nodded, but his eyes clouded with something I couldn't quite name. Hurt? Confusion? Resentment? We crawled into bed after that, on opposite sides. Again. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering when exactly my body stopped being mine. When it became either something to withhold or something to give out of guilt. And then the thought came again. The same one that's been circling for months. Why does everything have to turn into sex? We went to my cousin Farah's house for dinner that weekend. She lives on the edge of town, in a big airy place filled with noisy laughter, scented candles, and hand-me-down chaos. Her son, Zion, had just turned 19 and was helping set the table while music played in the background. I had spent half the afternoon straightening my hair, applying light makeup, trying to look together. For what reason, I wasn't even sure. Maybe I was trying to convince myself more than anyone else. The evening started normally enough, loud chatter, clinking plates, kids running around. Amir was in a good mood, laughing with Farah's husband, drink in hand, finally present. I watched him from across the room, trying to match his ease with my own. But something inside me felt glass thin. Ready to crack. Dinner was served. Everyone gathered around the long table, passing dishes, joking, snapping photos. I bent over to pick up a spoon I'd dropped when I felt someone behind me, a presence. Brief, close. A brush of breath near my hair. It was Zion, reaching past me to grab a pitcher. He apologized, casual and polite, but my body locked. That feeling again. That freeze. My heart pounded in a way that made no sense. It wasn't attraction. It wasn't even discomfort with him specifically. It was a collision, memory and longing and grief, all tangled up in one reflex. It reminded me of everything I was missing. I forced a smile, waved it off, sat back at the table, but I could barely taste the food after that. My skin felt wrong. Tight. Like it didn't belong to me. Later, as we drove home in silence, Amir reached across the car and placed his hand on my thigh. A small gesture. One he thought was sweet. I snapped. Can you just not touch me right now? He pulled his hand back like I'd slapped it. What the hell, Mira? I'm not a light switch, Amir. You can't just flip me on when it's convenient. What are you talking about? I was just what? Trying? Playing the good husband? Hoping if you touch me enough times, I'll stop noticing how empty this all feels? He stared at the road, knuckles wide on the steering wheel. I can't win with you anymore. Every time I try, you shut down. You want me to guess what's wrong? Because I'm running out of clues. Tears burned at my eyes. I don't want you to guess. I want you to ask. I want you to listen. Not just rub my back and hope it leads to sex. Not just kiss me when it's convenient. I want you to see me, Amir. I'm still here, but I feel like I'm disappearing in front of you. We pulled into our driveway. The house loomed in front of us, dark and familiar and stifling. He didn't say anything. Just got out and went inside. I stayed in the car, breathing hard, fingers clenched around my coat. What the hell had just happened? Why had I yelled? Why had I exploded over a touch? Over a boy passing behind me with a pitcher? And why did it hurt so much to admit that his clumsy closeness had lit a match in a room I've kept dark for so long? I sat there for another 10 minutes, face in my hands, crying quietly, not just from guilt, but from the unbearable shame of it all. That moment in the kitchen with Zion, that freeze, it wasn't about him. It was about what I no longer felt at home. The way a simple, thoughtless proximity had jolted me awake to a hunger I'd trained myself to ignore. And then I thought it again, this time with a sob I couldn't stop. Why does everything have to turn into sex? Not love. Not laughter. Not softness. Sex. The shortcut to closeness. The substitute for actual connection. And maybe the worst part? I wasn't even sure if I was mad at him, or just furious at myself for letting things get this far. The silence came first, not loud or angry, just muted. Amir stopped reaching for me in bed. He started leaving earlier for the hospital, coming home later. We still said good morning and good night. We still passed each other the salt at dinner, still asked, did the kids finish their homework, or did you move the laundry? But eye contact? Touch? Real conversation? Gone. It had been almost 3 weeks since the night I'd snapped in the car. We hadn't talked about it. We hadn't talked about anything that mattered. And I missed him. God, I missed him. Not just his arms or his voice or the weight of his hand in mine. I missed the way he used to tell stories about his surgeries, dramatic and proud, like he was letting me in on a secret world. I missed the way he used to walk in the front door and light up when he saw me, even when I was in old pajamas and my hair was a mess. Now, when he walked in, he barely looked up from his phone. Last Tuesday, I heard him laughing on the phone in the kitchen, really laughing, like the old Amir. I crept halfway down the stairs, holding my breath, listening. It was one of his colleagues. A woman, maybe? The voice was muffled. I wasn't jealous. That's the strange part. I was envious, not of the person on the other end, but of him. Of how easily he could still be himself with someone else. Of how freely he could laugh. When was the last time he laughed like that with me? That night, I stood in the doorway of the bedroom while he undressed, watching him fold his shirt, place his watch on the nightstand. He looked tired. Older. Sad, in a way that made my throat tighten. Amir, I said quietly. He turned. Yeah? But the words stuck. I didn't know what I wanted to say. I miss you? I'm sorry? Touch me, but don't expect anything? Instead, I said, you left your lunchbox in the car again. He nodded. I'll grab it in the morning. That was it. I went to bed feeling like a ghost in my own house. The next afternoon, I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by the mess of life, unfolded laundry, a half-drunk cup of tea, shoes kicked off near the door, and I thought about that moment in the kitchen. The brush of Zion behind me. The freeze. The ache. And suddenly I wasn't mad at myself for it anymore. I wasn't ashamed. I understood it now. That jolt I'd felt, it wasn't desire. It was proof I still had nerves under my skin. That I hadn't gone entirely numb. But it also wasn't something I wanted from someone else. Not really. I wanted it from Amir. I just didn't know how to find him again. He wasn't the villain in our story. He was doing his best in the only language he knew. And somewhere along the line, I'd stopped translating. We'd both built walls thinking they were boundaries. We'd both protected ourselves so much that we couldn't feel anything anymore. I thought of walking away. The idea had floated through my mind more than once. But not in anger, in defeat. Like two people who've been trying to start a fire with wet matches. But sitting there, the house quiet, our lives still tangled in 100 tiny ways. I realized I wasn't ready to burn it all down. Not yet. Maybe we were broken. But we weren't beyond repair. And for the first time in weeks, I decided, I want to try again. Even if I have no idea how. It started with soup. Nothing grand, nothing scripted. Just a bowl of lentil soup I left on the kitchen counter when I knew he'd be home late. I didn't text him. Didn't say, it's for you. I just made it the way he liked, lemon squeezed on top, crispy fried onions, a slice of toasted bread on the side. He came in quietly. I was pretending to read on the couch, lights dimmed, kids asleep. He walked past the living room, then paused. You made this? I nodded without looking up. Yeah. Just, figured you'd be hungry. A beat passed. Thanks, he said softly. No sarcasm. No tension. Just warmth. He sat across from me while he ate, not the usual silence, not staring at a screen. Just us, in the same room, breathing the same air. It was nothing, but it was more than we'd had in weeks. The next day, I asked if he wanted to go for a walk. Just down the block. No expectations. To my surprise, he said yes. We didn't hold hands. We didn't talk much. But we walked side by side like we used to, when we first moved into this house and everything felt new. I pointed out the neighbor's garden. He made a quiet joke about how ours could use some love. We both laughed. Later that night, he came into our room after brushing his teeth. I was already in bed, knees tucked to my chest, the lamp still on. He hesitated at the door. Can I sit? I nodded. He sat on the edge of the bed, not facing me. His shoulders were hunched, hands fidgeting. I don't know how to fix this, he said finally. But I don't want to lose you. My throat tightened. I don't want to be lost. I need us to slow down. Stop defaulting to physical fixes when the emotional stuff is starving. He turned to me then, eyes rimmed with quiet regret. I thought touching you meant I still loved you. I know, I whispered. And I thought pulling away meant I was protecting myself. But maybe it just made things worse. He leaned in, slowly, as if asking with his body. He didn't kiss me, he just rested his forehead against mine. We stayed like that. Still. Warm. Real. When he pulled away, he kissed my forehead. No pressure. No agenda. Just presence. He didn't try to climb into bed. He didn't suggest anything else. He just whispered, "Good night, Mira," and walked to the couch. I lay there for a long time, staring at the ceiling. My heart still ached. But for the first time in a long while, it didn't ache alone. You know, when it happened, when Zion brushed behind me that day in the kitchen, I didn't understand what was really breaking inside me. I froze, yes. But not from fear. It wasn't about Zion at all. It was about me. That single, fleeting moment made me realize how long it had been since I felt seen. Since I felt wanted in a way that didn't come with assumptions or timing or expectation. And that shook me, not because it was inappropriate, but because it reminded me I had gone numb. You don't really notice when it happens. That slow erosion of self. That soft disconnection between what you need and what you allow. It starts small, a missed compliment, a dry kiss, a tired maybe later. You tell yourself it's normal. Marriage has seasons. Love changes. People get busy. And all of that's true. But no one tells you how painful it is when that change isn't mutual. For years, I thought I was doing what a good wife does. Supporting Amir. Giving space. Not being too needy. But somewhere in the quiet of all that compromise, I forgot how to ask for what I needed too. I thought if I gave more, he'd notice. If I stayed quiet long enough, he'd miss my voice. If I touched him just right, he'd reach for my soul, not just my skin. But love isn't telepathy. And silence doesn't earn you intimacy. I learned that the hard way. There were days I hated him, hated how easy it was for him to fall asleep beside me when my mind was spinning with loneliness. But I see it now. Amir wasn't cruel. He wasn't careless. He was tired too. Stuck in his own patterns, his own survival mode. And he thought touching me, reaching for me at night, was love. That it meant we were okay. But love without listening is just muscle memory. And desire without emotional safety? It feels like being touched through a wall. We're still figuring it out. No dramatic rebirth. No candlelit confessions or second honeymoons. Just tiny, awkward moments where we both try, and sometimes fail, to see each other again. He sleeps in our bed now, but we talk more. Sometimes, it's just about the kids. Sometimes, it's about us. He's learning to ask before he reaches. And I'm learning not to run when I feel overwhelmed. Some nights, we still lie back to back. But the space between us doesn't feel so final. And if you're listening, if any of this feels familiar, I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me. Your body is not a peace offering. Your silence is not a love language. You deserve to be touched like you're a person, not a placeholder. And if you've been with someone for years and you suddenly find yourself flinching, or aching for connection that feels real, that's not you being broken, that's your heart trying to speak. Listen to it. Because what I learned, what I'm still learning, is that love needs more than time. It needs presence. It needs courage. It needs two people who are willing to feel everything, not just the easy parts. I almost left. And maybe one day I still will. But for now, I'm staying. Not because it's easier. But because trying, truly trying, is the bravest thing I can do for myself right now. And who knows? Maybe the most intimate thing in the world isn't sex. Maybe it's staying in the room after the silence. And whispering, I'm still here. Even when you're not sure what comes next.